Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. The date is 5th of Safar, 1447 on the Islamic calendar, corresponding to 31st July 2025 on the Gregorian calendar. And you are watching Muslim World News with me, your host, Abdurrahman Muhammad. Let's dive in headfirst and take a look at today's headlines. Missing footage raise evidence handling concern. Safaricom reaches 50 million users. ICC convicts car militia leaders. And for business, CBK accuses counties of banking violations. And on sports, Qatar confirms 2036 bid. For our top story, right here at home, the missing footage relating to death inquiry of a woman and her child in a ferry accident has raised concern over the handling and preservation of evidence in Kenya's justice system. The footage is part of crucial evidence about the death of Mariam Kigenda and her daughter, Amanda Mutheu, who drowned after their vehicle slipped off the ferry, MV Harambee, and sunk into the Indian Ocean at the Likoni Channel in Mombasa, Kenya in 2019. Authorities are under pressure to clarify the situation and provide answers, as the disappearance of this key evidence could affect the investigation's credibility, forcing the managing director of Kenya Ferry Services and the Likoni Division Criminal Investigating Officer, DCIO, to explain the missing CCTV footage. The public, including the family of the victims, have voiced frustration over the lack of transparency in the investigation. There are growing calls for accountability and many urging the authorities to provide a full explanation about how the footage went missing. Officials from the Ministry of Transport and other relevant agencies have stated that they are committed to ensuring accountability and thoroughness in the investigation, which has drawn considerable attention due to its severity. The missing footage is seen as a critical part of the inquiry, and its absence could have legal implications for those involved. Authorities are continuing the investigation to determine the whereabouts of the footage and to establish how to proceed with the case. On to our next piece. Safaricom PLC has achieved a major milestone, surpassing 50 million mobile subscribers in Kenya. The announcement comes ahead of the company's 25th anniversary in October 2025 and highlights its dominance as the country's leading telecom providers. Started in the year 2000 with just 17,000 subscribers, Safaricom has grown into tandem with Kenya's digital transformation, expanding access to mobile and financial services across urban and rural areas. The company attributes this growth to a year-long customer engagement campaign, including initiatives such as Sambaza Furaha and M-Pesa Sokoni, which boosted loyalty and broadened service access. CEO Peter Ndengwa credited the achievement to strong customer trust and emphasized the company's ongoing commitment to innovation and impact. Safaricom is also expanding regionally, with its Ethiopian operations crossing 10 million subscribers as of July 2025. This is part of a larger goal to become Africa's leading purpose-driven tech company by 2030. Economically, Safaricom contributed 722 billion to Kenya's economy last year and supported over 1.28 million jobs. Its social programs have reached more than 8 million Kenyans through education, healthcare, and empowerment initiatives. Taking a look at our northern neighbors in Sudan, power has shifted away from formal institutions to armed groups, particularly the Rapid Support Forces and Darfur rebel factions. Analysts note that leaders like Mohammed Hamad Dagalo, who heads the RSF, has turned battlefield success into political dominance. His group, originally the Janjaweed, gained wealth through gold mining and regional mercenary work, establishing a model where force equals power. This approach has encouraged a system where militia trade violence for influence. The RSF, once a centralized force, is now fragmenting into tribal and profit-driven fractions. Fighters are motivated by looting and personal gain, weakening unity within the ranks and making control increasingly unstable. In April 2025, the RSF and allied groups created a rival government, the Government of Peace and Unity, to administer their territories. This move deepened national fragmentation and challenges the transitional authority. With militias in charge of local governance, Sudan risks sliding further into chaos, where violence and war economies replace any chance of civilian-led stability. Moving away from that story, we now take a look at the International Criminal Court, where two former militia leaders from the Central African Republic have been convicted by the International Criminal Court for committing war crimes and crimes against humanity. Alfred Yekatom, once a soldier, and Patrice Edouard Ngaisona, a former sports minister, was sentenced for their leadership roles in the anti-Balaka armed group. The ICC ruled they played a central role in organizing attacks during the country's civil unrest between 2013 and 2014. The charges include killings, forced displacements, and recruiting child soldiers. Many of the victims were Muslim civilians targeted in a wave of intercommunal violence. Yekatom received a 15-year sentence, while Ngaisona will serve 12 years. The ruling marks the ICC's first conviction related to anti-Balaka crimes, a major step towards accountability in the region. Investigations into other actors involved in the conflict are still underway. On other news, Prince Al-Walid bin Khalid bin Talal Al Saud, widely known as Saudi Arabia's sleeping prince, passed away at age 36 after remaining in a coma for 2 decades, following a severe car accident in London in 2005 when he was only 15 years old. The crash caused excessive brain hemorrhage and internal injuries, leaving him unresponsive and hospitalized at the King Abdul Aziz Medical City in Riyadh, where he was kept on continuous life support, despite consultations with international medics, experts, and occasional minor physical responses such as finger movements captured in family-shared videos. He never regained consciousness. His father, Prince Khalid bin Talal, steadfastly refused to withdraw life support, holding deep religious conviction and public resolve that only divine will could determine his son's fate. The prince's prolonged condition became a powerful symbol of enduring hope, love, and faith across Saudi society and beyond. Thousands expressed condolences online, while the hashtag Sleeping Prince trended, and his hospital room became a spiritual landmark visited by well-wishers and prayers alike. His funeral prayers occurred on July 20th, 2025 at Riyadh's Imam Turki bin Abdullah Mosque, as the nation reflected on his deeply moving chapter of royal history. For another development that has been making headlines, in a deeply controversial move, Israel's parliament has approved legislation to annex part of the occupied West Bank, sparking outrage and global concern. The Israeli Parliament passed a bill approving the annexation of key parts of the West Bank, a region long recognized by the international community as occupied Palestinian territory. The measure aimed to legalize and expand Israeli sovereignty over areas that include settlements considered illegal under international law. Palestinian leaders condemned the move as a death blow to the peace process, while foreign governments called for restraint and warned of far-reaching consequences. The decision came amid rising tension in the region and growing international calls for renewed negotiations, calls that now appeared increasingly unlikely to be answered. As reactions pour in, the world watches closely to see what the next chapter holds for one of the most protracted and volatile conflicts of our time. Our next story takes us onto a more positive note. A historic declaration from the Élysée Palace, French President Emmanuel Macron announced that France would formally recognize the State of Palestine. In a landmark statement, President Macron confirmed that France was preparing to officially recognize Palestine as an independent state, a move widely regarded as a game-changer in European diplomacy. The declaration aligned France with several other European nations that had recently made similar announcements in support of Palestinian sovereignty. Macron's statement followed increasing global concern over Israel's ongoing military operations in Gaza and the humanitarian toll on Palestinian civilians. While no exact date was given, French officials stated that formal steps would be taken in coordination with international partners. As France joins the growing list of countries recognizing Palestine, attention now turns to how this bold diplomatic move will influence broader international policy and peace efforts in the Middle East. Moving on to business news, the Central Bank of Kenya has raised alarm over a critical gap in public financial oversight, revealing it cannot legally shut down thousands of unauthorized bank accounts opened by county government. Governor Kamau Thuge told the Senate that more than 1,800 commercial accounts are currently in operation in direct violation of Kenya's Public Finance Management Act. The law requires that all public funds be deposited at the central bank to ensure tighter controls, transparency, and auditability. This revelation has sparked concern over how devolved units are handling public money, with some lawmakers describing the situation as a financial time bomb. Experts warn that the continued use of these accounts make counties vulnerable to mismanagement, embezzlement, and shadow spending. The CBK is now calling for urgent amendments to the law to give it enforcement power. Until then, the regulator says it remains powerless to act even when rules are clearly being broken. The issue also raises bigger questions about the balance between national and county financial authority and whether Kenya's devolution model can be sustained without stronger safeguards in place. Away from that story, still on business news, Kenya's capital markets are showing signs of renewed life after the Nairobi Securities Exchange surpassed a market capitalization of 2.5 trillion Kenyan shillings, a level last seen before recent economic shocks. President William Ruto has praised the rally as a clear signal that investor confidence is returning. He attributed the market rebound to fiscal tightening, structural reforms, and a pro-business agenda under his bottom-up economic transformation plan. As part of that agenda, Ruto announced plans to list major state-owned firms on the NSE, including the Kenya Pipeline Company, as a way to raise capital, reduce public borrowing, and allow ordinary Kenyans to own a piece of national assets. The move is expected to deepen Kenya's capital markets, encourage saving and investment, and promote public-private partnership. However, market analysts caution that success will depend on transparency in the listing process, proper assets valuation, and ensuring that the listed entities operate in commercial efficiency. If executed well, this strategy could redefine how infrastructure is funded in Kenya through citizen ownership rather than debt. As trade wars continue, a sharp escalation in global trade tension is unfolding as the United States President Donald Trump imposes a 50% tariff on Brazilian imports. This policy shift is already disrupting trade flows between the two economies and may have long-term implications for global supply chains. Although the United States currently enjoys a trade surplus with Brazil, the tariff appears driven more by politics than economics. Targeted sectors include agriculture, metals, and chemicals industries, critical to Brazil's export earnings. Within days of the announcement, major contracts were suspended or cancelled. In response, Brazil is accelerating its pivot to China, a long-time trade partner, by expanding bilateral trade agreements and logistics cooperation. Analysts say this deepening relationship could reconfigure economic alliances in the Americas, especially if Brazil begins to rely more heavily on Chinese financing and infrastructure investments. The tariff row also underlines a broader trend. Emerging economies are increasingly turning to China as a stable economic partner, especially in an era of rising nationalism and protectionism from the West. In other business news, in a move that signals changing regional dynamics, Saudi Arabia has pledged $2.9 billion for infrastructure development in Syria. The funding is part of a larger $6.4 billion package involving Gulf nations focused on rebuilding the country's shattered economy. The money will be channeled into critical sectors like energy, cement manufacturing, and digital infrastructure. Officials estimate that over 200,000 jobs will be created, offering hope to millions affected by years of civil war. Beyond economic aid, This initiative marks a significant political shift. For years, Gulf states distanced themselves from the Assad regime. Now, with Syria gradually becoming reaccepted into regional forums, economic diplomacy is taking center stage. Saudi Arabia's investment also comes after it helped settle part of Syria's international debt, a gesture that could pave the way for future loans from the World Bank and the IMF. Analysts view the deal as a strategic move by Riyadh to counter Iran's influence in Syria, diversify its foreign investments portfolio, and position itself as a leader in regional reconstruction. The long-term success of the initiative will depend on improved security in areas like Sweden, where instability still lingers, and on Syria's ability to create a credible investment environment for global partners. It's important to reflect on a word that's often heard but rarely understood in its true form: jihad. This feature aims to shed light on what jihad really is in Islam, far from the misconceptions tied to violence or extremism. Jihad is about personal growth, inner struggle, and striving to live a life of purpose and integrity. Through this piece, our reporter Nabil Abdullah will shed light on what jihad means beyond the headlines and uncover its true meaning.
To many outside the Muslim world, the word jihad stirs images of conflict, extremism, and fear. It is a word that's often misunderstood, frequently misused, and rarely explained with the depth it deserves. But for over 1 billion Muslims around the world, jihad is something very different. It's not a call for violence. It's a personal, moral, and spiritual struggle to live a life of integrity, discipline, and purpose. In Arabic, the word jihad simply means striving or struggle. In the context of Islamic belief, it refers to the ongoing efforts to be a better person, to resist temptation, to speak the truth and act justly, and to remain faithful even in difficult times. This inner battle is what the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ called the greater jihad, the struggle against one's own ego, pride, anger, selfishness. For most Muslims, this is the jihad they live every day. Beyond the personal, jihad can also refer to the efforts to improve society through education, charity, justice, and community service. It includes the work of those who stand up against oppression, poverty, or ignorance, the student who studies through hardship, parents who sacrifices for their children, the doctor serving in under-resourced areas. These are all forms of quiet, everyday forms of jihad. They are peaceful, positive acts done in pursuit of something better for oneself and for others. Unfortunately, in recent decades, the word jihad has been distorted both by violent extremist groups who use it to justify terrorism and by the media narratives that present it as a synonym for holy war. But Islamic teachings are very clear. Violence against innocent people is strictly forbidden. The Quran calls for justice and condemns transgression. Islam permits self-defense in certain cases, but must follow strict rules. No harm to civilians, no destructions of nature, no cruelty, and no revenge. The misuse of jihad by extremists is not a reflection of Islam. It's a betrayal of its core principles. True jihad has nothing to do with the headlines that often define it. It is a quiet struggle, not a public battle, a private effort, not a political slogan. Today, jihad continues not on battlefields, but in classrooms, hospitals, homes, and streets. It is lived by the mother teaching her children compassion, the young man overcoming addiction, the activist peacefully standing up for justice, and the believer waking early. Understanding the true meaning of jihad is not just about correcting a definition. It's about challenging stereotypes, deepening empathy, and recognizing that shared human experience of struggle. For Muslims, jihad is a reminder that life itself is a test, and striving to be better is a form of worship. What most people don't see is that the greatest form of jihad isn't waged with weapons, it's fought from within. And it's that internal battle for goodness, resilience, and truth that defines what jihad really is. Nabil Abdallah, Al Huda TV.
Dear watchers, shifting our attention onto sports news, a rising Kenyan football talent currently playing for Manchester United's youth team has shared heartfelt admiration for one of the club's senior coaches. Mohamed Bajaber, who is steadily climbing the ranks in England, spoke highly of Benny McCarthy, praising the former South African striker for his openness and no-nonsense mentorship. Bajaber described McCarthy as someone who doesn't sugarcoat feedback, something he finds both refreshing and motivating. Drawing a comparison, Bajaber likened McCarthy's style to that of Jurgen Klopp, highlighting how authenticity and honesty builds respect among players. Though developing his career abroad, Bajaber hasn't ruled out donning the national colours. He remains eligible to represent Kenya's Harambee Stars, and fans back home are watching his journey with keen. On to our second piece on sports news. Qatar's Olympic Committee has officially submitted a bid to host the 2036 Olympic and Paralympic Games, and it is ongoing discussion with the International Olympic Committee aiming to become the first Middle Eastern country ever to stage the Summer Games. Qatar is already boasting about 95% of the required sport infrastructure from past events like the 2022 FIFA World Cup and the 2024 Asian Cup. Qatar says it has a national plan to reach full readiness and build a legacy grounded in social, economic, and environmental sustainability. The bid joins those from Indonesia, Turkey, India, and Chile, while Saudi Arabia, South Korea, Egypt, Germany, Denmark, and Canada are also reportedly considering bids. Extreme heat remains a consideration, drawing parallels with 2022 World Cup being shifted to winter to be addressed in planning discussions. Finally, taking a look at the football world, Marcus Rashford has joined FC Barcelona on a season-long loan from Manchester United, with the Spanish club covering his full salary and securing a £26 million purchase option. After tensions with United manager Ruben Amorim and a short loan at Aston Villa, Rashford pushes for the move, accepting a wage cut to join under Barcelona coach Hansi Flick. Barcelona confirmed the deal despite financial limitations, marking Rashford as one of the most valuable loan signing in La Liga history. Dear watchers, that's all we had lined up for you today, but before we go, here is something that might just lift your spirits instantly. Did you know smiling, even when you don't feel like it, can actually trick your brain into feeling happier by releasing feel-good chemicals like dopamine and serotonin? If you didn't know, well, now you know. That brings us to the end of today's program of Muslim World News. I've been yours truly, Abdul Rahman Muhammad. It's been a pleasure having you with us. Stay informed, stay inspired, and may peace be upon you. Until next time.